guys, today I'm going to show you how I turned this dress into this dress. So I started off with this oversized dress. It was just a gift from my mom that she ended up not liking and said I could do whatever I wanted with it. So I started playing with it, seeing what I could actually do to make it work for me. I decided I needed to change a few things. So I started with this by marking out my waist, the thinnest part of my waist, which I marked there with tape. Then I took my ruler and some chalk and drew a straight line right across, following where that tape was. Then I lined up the bottom seams and did a nice straight cut. That way I was working with two separate things, a skirt and a bodice. A little bit easier to work with for me. Okay, then I turned my top half inside out, so I was working on the wrong side, and then I drew out a scoop neck. I wasn't really sure at this point what I wanted to do with those sleeves, so I didn't deconstruct the entire dress. If I was going to do this again, I would just deconstruct the whole thing into all of its initial pieces and then do all of the things that I did, but you know, you live, you learn. So I decided I wanted a bit of an off-shoulder sort of scoop neck look. So after drawing out kind of a preliminary idea, I cut it, and then I began looking at the actual like details of it to see if it was worth it to keep those sleeves. So then I tried it on, and I kind of positioned where I wanted some darts to go so that the bodice would actually fit me, because it was really loose on my top half. So I kind of mapped out where I thought some darts would work, and I pinned some preliminary darts. It was at this point that I realized it might just be easier to be working with the pieces completely separately, like a front bodice piece, a back bodice piece, and two sleeves. So I cut the front from the back and then started trying to negotiate those darts with the back still attached at the sleeves. As you'll see in a minute, I decided that just wasn't really worth it, and I end up deconstructing the pattern pieces into completely separate pieces. Okay, now that they're separate, I just started removing the bulk from the seams, like the areas that had been serged before with a serger, so they were just a little bulky. And now I was looking at just a front bodice pattern piece. I lined it up with the center just so that I could make sure that it was like fully symmetrical, and just trimmed up the edges where things weren't quite lining up. I then drew in those darts that I had pinned previously. I had a pretty good idea about how much I was taking away, so these are just kind of rough darts. Obviously you shouldn't do rough darts, you should put it on a mannequin or something to make sure, but I was pretty certain from before when I had pinned. So I pinned these darts and lined them up, made sure that they were symmetrical, and then I stitched them down. I ended up deciding to remove those sleeves from the back bodice piece, and then kind of played with how I wanted those sleeves to sit. And of course, I did all of my pinning the wrong way, so I repinned my little darts on the fly and then just sewed them down. And I actually sewed the first time down with just a gathering stitch, just so that if these darts were not in a good spot, it would be easy to seam rip them out and redo them. They ended up being fine though, so I just top stitched down over them again after finishing the project. Okay, so I just trimmed the excess off of those darts, just so there wouldn't be any bulk on the inside of the dress. So now you can see how that sort of made that fit around like a human body shape. Okay, at this point I decided I want those sleeves a little off shoulder, not like totally off shoulder, but a little bit. So I added an additional dart into the armpit region. This also made the armhole the right size. Without doing this little dart, it would have shown a lot of side boob. So by adding this little dart at that armpit area, it just covered the risk of side boob and also made the strap sit where I wanted it to. You can see it really widened out that scoop neck. So I just stitched down those little darts. And then I folded that back piece in half and just trimmed it so that it was symmetrical. And then with the right sides together, so working on the wrong sides, I pinned the side seams together for the back piece and the front piece for the bodice. After pinning the sides, I just put one pin for each of the strap bits so that it would be easy for me to adjust them once I tried it on. I also tried in vain to work with this fabric to try and get rid of those little edgy pieces. It ends up being a problem the entire time, so it didn't really help. Alright, then I turned it inside out, checked how it looked, and then put it on. Yes, there are a million pins up against my skin at this point. So there was still a little bit of gapiness in the armpit region, so I had to pull that in a little bit. I ended up pulling out the pins and putting that bodice back on inside out. Put those sleeves where I like them. You can see that dart that I put up by the armpit now pretty clearly. So at this point I was just kind of working with the mirror, trying to pin the bodice so that it fit really snug. It's a really stretchy fabric, so it was going to be easy to like pull over once it was finished. So I wanted it to be really snug, like a bodycon dress sort of. There we go. So once I felt like it was fitted how I wanted, I repinned the tops of the sleeves so that they were the right, tightness. And then once I felt pretty confident with that, I took it off and then I repinned the sides. So you can see at this point the pins are going down and I can't sew into my machine with the pins that direction. So I had to change the direction, make it perpendicular. So that's what I did. I also just added a line of chalk just to give me something to follow so that it's a little easier for the sewing portion. Alright, after I repinned the side seams, I sewed them down. Again, I was just using a gathering stitch, so that's like the longest stitch length. Just in case it was not perfect, I would be able to seam rip it and sew it again. It ended up fitting like pretty much perfectly, so I didn't have to do that. I just went over it again with a tighter stitch. I did the same thing with those strappy, sleevey bits. I don't know if I'll call them straps or sleeves, but after that I tried it on again, saw that it fit pretty much just the way that I wanted to. There was nothing loose or gapey or anything. So now I was going to start working with the bottom of the skirt. So first I just cut along the side seams, broke the skirt down into a front piece and a back piece. And Then I took my waist measurement and divided it by 4. Since I'm working with 2 pattern pieces, or 2, like 1 front, 1 back piece, each one represents half of your waist, and I was using, folding them in half and cutting them, so. Okay, so 7 1/4 is gonna be how wide I want my top to be. First, I'm just gonna cut this to straighten it. A little better. So 7 1/4, I will line up my measuring tape. Okay, so, and that's gonna be at my skinniest part. From my skinniest part to my widest part is 8 inches. And this is where my widest part is. And that part needs how much space? Let's find out. Holy moly, 37. So we do 38 for the mathematics. So 9 1/2 is how big we need it to be at that point, which is right there. So even though my brain wants to just draw a line straight like that, if I do that, then at my widest point, which is right here, it'll be too tight. Okay, so I can take a little bit, oops, bit, like I can have it stretch a little because I'm not like terribly upset if it does that. There. That'll be my line. So then I'll just cut onto that, and then I'll be able to sew my front and back together. Alright. There we go. So there's my front piece. Alright, so now that that part's done, I'm just going to take the front and back pieces, lay them over one another, and I'm going to sew them together. So after pinning the front and back pieces together, I sewed down those side seams again at a gathering stitch, so widest or longest stitch length, just so it was going to be easier because I knew this was going to need to be edited. So once I put it on, I saw that I still needed to take in quite a bit to make it match up with the front bodice. I was just playing with it here to see if I wanted to do it with an open back or if I just wanted it to be like a regular dress, I guess. And then I fitted it to me with pins. And then even though that had a seam in it, I went over that seam with the new fitted bit. Just followed along that line that I had drawn out in chalk along my pins. This time I didn't repin, I just pulled them out as I went. And this one is not sewn on a gathering stitch because I was pretty certain of my measurements at this time. So I cut away the bulky extra fabric on both sides just so that it would lay more flat. And then since I was pretty much certain that this was my exact size now, didn't have to do any more fitting. So I took the bodice and turned it inside out and then lined up the waistline for both the skirt and the bodice and pinned it together. So at this point I've got right sides together and I'm pinning all the way around, and after pinning all the way around I just sewed all the way around that waistline with a 5/8 of an inch seam. All of my seams were 5/8 of an inch except for the finishing seams for the sleeves and for the neckline. Man, that ring is pretty. Okay, so after I did the waistline, I pulled out all the pins and did a try on of everything, and everything was fitting just how I wanted it to. It looked super cute. You could put the sleeves like angled, or you could have them pretty much all the way off the shoulder. So at this point, I just really needed to finish up the edge line, the hemline, I guess, or the collar, neckline, armpit hole zones. So what I did for that was no pinning, no ironing. Maybe I should have, but I just folded the seam under and did a really close to the edge top stitch, and that folded under all of the raw edges, but it didn't end up looking as clean as I would have liked. I think it would have been good with some kind of bias tape or something just to hide all of the raw edges, because this fabric already looks kind of not shaggy, but the seams that they've put all throughout the actual fabric make it really difficult for the edges to lay flat without folding it on itself or having some kind of structure underneath it. Like the bottom hemline had some interfacing or something to stiffen it up and make the edges look smooth. But remember that old dress, loose, sleevey, obviously not my size. There's the original, and here is the final transformation. So it ended up with a little bit thinner sleeves than I would have liked, but it's got a lot of bare chest, could go really cool with a big chunky necklace. The rest of the dress fit really great. It was still really stretchy, so it was really easy to get in and out of. Not a dress where you could wear like tight underwear, that's for sure. But other than that, I really love how this dress turned out. So thanks for watching, and if you like this video, let me know. See you in the next one.